listening to The Greg Kelly Show.
Well, it's been many decades since Ricky Schroder became household name famous with his appearance in The Champ with Jon Voight. Since then, many roles and also some political activism that I think is totally fantastic. He's been very supportive of the troops. So many interesting documentaries about what's happening right now in the world, especially with America's military and fighting men and women. And he has been popping up in some really interesting places. He was advocating for Kyle Rittenhouse and others unfairly accused, and he's got something special to tell us about. First of all, Ricky Schroder, welcome to WABC Radio. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
Oh, Greg, I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me, and hello to your great audience. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, and thank you for what you're doing with Real American Heroes Foundation, realamericanheroesfoundation.org. We'll get to that in a little bit, but first, Ricky, do me a favor. Tell us who Tina Peters is. I've heard the name. I know she's a clerk in Colorado, and she's in big trouble right now.
Yes, that's right. Tina, she was Mesa County clerk. She was in charge of securing the vote and the elections for our county. She's one of like 5,000 county clerks in our nation. And I feel like they're doing a show trial here and trying to make an example of this woman to keep all the other county clerks in line because there's another election coming up. And she's facing life behind bars for, in my opinion, doing the right thing. She didn't change any vote records. She just wanted to make a copy of the voting record that existed. And, there was a software update. You've heard of these Smartmatic internet-connected election machines. Those things are headquartered here in Colorado, that company. And so they have a lot of power in this state. And so Tina, she wanted to get a copy of the voting record, from what I know. And she didn't trust that the software update wasn't going to change things. And she takes her sacred oath to protect the vote very seriously. And so a fella came in, Greg, that I know. And I spent time with this fella myself back in November of 2020, looking at election fraud data with him and Hunter Biden's laptop with him. And that fella came here and he took some pictures of the voting equipment, and he even texted me from the office that day.
Let me before we get into look, as you know, there's all kinds of litigation underway with these companies, and there are people out there who are prohibited from speaking about it. But I want to, so we have that going, and I understand. But
right.
She's charged. Essentially, I'm trying to figure out what she allegedly did wrong, and it's very kind of amorphous. It's like trying to influence an election, or trying to corruptly influence an election. That's very much in the eye of the beholder, I would imagine. And this actually made it all the way up to the Supreme Court. They were going to turn down this case, like throw it out, but I guess Neil Gorsuch said the case can continue. Well, I'm looking it up. I'm looking it up as you are. But what is she actually charged with?
Well, she helped secure the Mr. Woods was the guy that had the badge that she gave to another guy I know, and let him in to take the copies of the election equipment. Not to change any votes, Greg, but to protect the vote, because there was a software update coming. And she couldn't get it done. The company wouldn't let her do it, from what I understand. And so she did it on her own accord. Okay, the guy got caught doing it, but they didn't go after that guy. And that guy's a patriot, as far as I know. He didn't set her up or do nothing wrong. But they don't go after that guy. They go after this woman who's a Gold Star mother, who's a patriot, and they're trying to make an example of her and put her away for the rest of her life.
So
she didn't change.
She didn't change any votes.
She allowed access, Greg. She allowed access to somebody, and the cameras got turned off while that access happened.
Now, here's what Colorado prosecutors, they charged Peters with 7 felony counts relating to attempting to influence a public servant, impersonation and identity theft, Peters also faces several misconduct charges of official misconduct, violating her duties and failing to comply with the Secretary of State's requirements. This is the one that really concerns me in terms of like, if they can wage this against her, you can wage it against just about anybody. Let's see here. Charged her with 7 felony counts relating to attempting to influence a public servant. I mean, every time I open, aren't you allowed to try to influence a public servant? It's called democracy, I thought, right? It sounds
Correct.
very, very weak to me and weird.
But there's a higher law, Greg. There's the higher law. You know, sometimes governments pass unjust laws, as we know, and people follow them. And this is she may have broken man's laws. I'm going to be in the trial sitting with her watching as much as I can for the next 12 days. But, even if you break man's laws, if you do it in the purpose and the calling of a higher law, then you should be innocent. And that's where I'm pleading for her on her behalf to everybody out there in this county, because they've had, I think, 700 articles written about Miss Peters of propaganda and just programming this community, this little farming community out here, Mesa County. There's 150,000 people here. Well, these people have been totally programmed, to believe she's this villain. And so I'm praying for the jury. I'm praying that we can get her, one person on that jury to understand there's a higher calling, and protecting the vote. There's nothing more sacred than protecting the vote. And like I said, she didn't change any votes. She just made a copy of the votes, and that pissed them off. And they're trying to make an example of her, so during this next election, all these county clerks will behave. And Tina's a hero. She's a real American hero.
Now we have the man's law. It's interesting because, well, look, people can look at the law and see and have different interpretations of what it means. I mean, we have a Supreme Court, and we have very smart people who can look at the same Constitution and think it means the opposite. 5-4 decisions. We have them all the time. Now, we're obligated to follow the law. We are. But, it's there was, up until not too long ago, people interpret it different ways. And I'm very suspicious of this case against her. Do me a favor. You said she's a Gold Star mom. What else can you tell us about her personally?
Well, she loves her dogs. Her dogs are her world. And her husband, her husband divorced her on his deathbed, and she was influenced by some people, because that's how dirty they are. That's how dirty they play. And so they influenced her husband to divorce her on his deathbed, and then he passed away not too long ago. And so, what else can I tell you about Tina? She loves Thai food. She was just over here the other day.
She loves Thai food.
We had a Thai feast, and she is a beautiful woman. I want to introduce her to John Voight.
Hey, Rick.
I think he's single.
They would be quite a couple. Rick, look, you are a real patriot. But you're active. You're active. I mean, how did that happen? I mean, just tell us. I mean, look, I had a political awakening at some point. There's a story there, from what we remember. I mean, well, we know you throughout the years, but what
we were trained.
Go ahead, say that again.
Greg, we were trained, right? We were child models, and so I remember my mom once told me, Ricky, do you know between you were 5 years old and 6.5? You had 200 modeling and commercial jobs, Ricky, between 5 and 6.5. And I thought, wow, Mom, that's a lot. 200 modeling and commercial jobs between 5 and 6.5. So then I realized, Greg, it was training. It was training. Probably, I don't have hard facts or hard evidence, but it was a training ground, because they then gave me the movie The Champ when I was 7, right? And so they trained me from 5 to 6.5 with all that work. And then, there was.
Well, train you for what, Rick? I feel what were they training you for? What do you?
Counter programming. I was a counter programming asset of theirs. I know that sounds out there. But
well, look, I'm listening. I mean, nothing's off the table right now because everything is so crazy and corrupt. And you saw what happened in the Olympics over the weekend. But counter programming to what? What were they trying to program you to be or not be?
Okay, so let me tell you how this developed real quick. We have a moment, right?
Yeah, sure.
So when the fellow that brought me Hunter Biden's laptop and the election fraud data in November 2020, when he brought me that information and sat with me for about 6 hours one night, it triggered a bunch of memories. And it had to do with somebody my father played tennis with named John Tolve, Tolve. And so anyways, I asked my parents about it, and they have no clue why John Tolve would, take me from the tennis courts into a classroom and like have headphones and tape recorder with me. Because every Saturday I'd go from St. Joseph's by the Sea in Staten Island, New York to play tennis with my dad. And from 9 to 12, I'd play tennis. But at some point I'd be taken into a classroom with just myself. And it didn't just happen there, though. It happened at his home. It happened at my home. It happened at other locations. And so this memories got triggered when the man that brought me Hunter Biden's laptop showed up at the house. And so I verified it with my sister because it happened to her, too. The same. John Tolve was a retired NYPD detective. He spent 30 years on the force and was my dad's tennis partner. And so he's dead now. But my parents claim they have no idea why John would have done that with me. And so my mother, though, I can't speak with my mother. She's not allowed to speak with me. But my mother's last words to me were, tell Ricky that there was other kids in the program. She was yelling because I was talking with my dad. And she said, tell him there's other kids in the program. It wasn't just him. And I remember some of the other kids. And so...
Let me just jump in for a second. And look, thanks. I didn't mean to spring all this on you or take you down this rabbit hole, but it's important, and I'm interested. What was this guy Tolve doing with those headphones and you in a classroom? I mean, is that what he took? You said your father's tennis partner, and he would take you for hours at a time into. Go ahead.
Patriot. They were programming me with, believe it or not, if you look at St. Joseph's by the Sea, if you go onto their recreation room now, they're a high school in Staten Island. All the Revolutionary War motif was all in my room. My room as a child was decorated with George Washington and forefathers fighting the redcoats. And so my bedspread, my pillowcase, the art on my wall, it's the same art that was in the rec center of St. Joseph's by the Sea today. So I think that it had to do with the forefathers, the Constitution. It had to do with God. It had to do with, counter programming.
And wait, was Tolve programming you in a good way?
I have no negative feelings towards Mr. Tolve at all. Mr. Tolve, I only think of in the fondest memories.
Well, it's all very interesting. This sounds like a book, a movie, all of the above, a episodic podcast, but it's totally fascinating, Ricky. It really is. Listen, in the meantime, two questions. Yeah. How can people get involved with the American Heroes Foundation?
Well, you can submit a Real American Heroes to us because we are not 501c nonprofit, and so we're trying to build this nation great and continue to fight to make this nation great. Those are the real American heroes, not what the Marxists in Hollywood are pushing. And so we have a couple films you can read on our website. You can read our screenplays and just sort of pray for us that we find the right people to start telling some real stories to change the programming coming out of Hollywood.
Well, you're already succeeding in so many ways, and the content that we have seen and the documentaries, they're awesome. And hey, by the way, how did you get you grew up in Brooklyn, Staten Island, but you sound like you are almost from the South these days. You spent a lot of time in the wilderness in a good way, right?
Well, yeah, I moved to Colorado when I was 20, and I still have the same place here on this ranch on the Gunnison River. And so I come back here, and life is good right now. I just got engaged. My kids are doing well. I can't be happier than my kids are doing good, and we have a great documentary we're working on called Erotic Erosion. I don't know if you want to have a second to talk about it, but I feel like while I got you, I just got to mention the porn problem.
Oh yeah,
it's a terrible problem, the pornography, and they never had the rights under the First Amendment to push it into our houses and phones. Freedom of speech does not include freedom of expression and pornography. As you know, the First Amendment, Greg, was for political speech, to be able to resist the powers of the day and not be thrown in jail. And then the courts defined it as freedom of expression to include pornographic images. That is not the actual text of our Constitution. And so English common law is what our colonies were founded on. And we have strayed so far from English common law. And it's time for us to reopen that chapter of American history and what is acceptable, public behavior and what is not.
It's fascinating. So anybody what? Sorry.
No, and so pornography, brother, when it was our generation that it came to first in this way. Before the camera was invented, you had to engage in perversion or witness it. And then the camera was invented. And then they've been pushing pornography to us ever since the camera was invented.
Rick, I'm afraid I got to go, Rick, but we got to have you back because it's so interesting.
All right.
It's fascinating. In our culture today, you sound like a dissident. But you are speaking. You are exactly. You are. This is where we should be, where you are, and yet it's just fascinating. And we're blessed that you're involved and what you're involved in, and we want to know more about Tina Peters. We'll stay on that case. And oh, by the way, you can find some great content. The Fighting Season that was done for DirecTV's audience channel. My Fighting Season and The Volunteers about the Syrian War. And all the other work. Folks, you should go to RealAmericanHeroesFoundation.org. RealAmericanHeroesFoundation.org. It's all there. And Ricky, you'll keep us up to date, and we're going to do some work to get to the bottom of this Tina Peters thing and see what we can do, okay? I so appreciate you calling in.
And you have such a beautiful family. Congratulations. God bless you, Greg.
Thank you, sir. To be continued, and we will be right back.
Greg Kelly.